So, the latest coup attempt in the Middle East involved plans to use explosive suicide drones, and the operators were allegedly trained in Ukraine. Has any of that been proven yet?
These are the assertions. Coup or no coup, this will be big for the Kurdistan region.
Welcome to this week's Iraq Briefing, where we discuss the latest stories shaping Iraq today. I am Omar Nadawi, and I'm once again delighted to be joined by my good friend and colleague Ahmed Ali, who has recently rejoined EPIC as a visiting senior fellow. It's really great to have you again, Ahmed.
Great to be with you, Omar. Thank you so much.
The story we're talking about today happened in the Kurdistan region, in Sulaymaniyah province particularly, where security forces have arrested prominent politician and Peshmerga commander Lahur Sheikh Jangi Talabani, along with 150 of his associates. Now, the arrest sparked violent, deadly clashes in this city, where security forces used heavy weapons, including heavy machine guns, armored vehicles, and even drones were reportedly used to bombard buildings. 5 people were killed at least in these clashes, and more than a dozen were injured. And the dead include 3 members of the security forces. Officials from the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, or the PUK, which controls Sulaymaniyah, said that Lahur Talabani and his armed associates were planning a coup against PUK leader and Lahor's rival and cousin, Bafel Talabani. Officials also released televised confessions from detainees describing plans to use sniper rifle to assassinate Bafel Talabani and also to use explosive suicide drones to attack Bafel Talabani's headquarters after allegedly receiving training in Ukraine on how to use these suicide drones. So, Ahmed, what is the latest on the situation?
The latest is that life has returned to normal in Sulaymaniyah. It almost returned to normal immediately after the operation. However, there is a sense of anticipation in Kurdistan at the moment, and in Sulaymaniyah in particular, as people, political forces, civic activists, and the whole city awaits for the trial or public sentencing of Lahur, Sheikh Jangi, or his associates, and what other details might come out in addition to what was aired in the confessions that the authorities in Sulaymaniyah published. So overall, it's a quiet scene in Sulaymaniyah at the moment, but there is a sense of anticipation.
Well, it's great to hear that there have been no immediate aftershocks from this episode. But clearly, this drastic and violent escalation didn't come out of thin air. What do we know about this, about the origins of this feud between the two cousins and leaders, Bafel and Lahore? And I recall that it had something to do with a party election that happened in 2019, right?
That's correct. These events are a culmination of 4 years of tension between Lahore Sheikh Jangi and Bafel Talabani. Both of them used to be the co-presidents of the PUK, but in 2021, Bafel Talabani removed Lahore Sheikh Jangi from his PUK responsibilities, and he became the sole leader of the PUK. And since then, there has been ongoing tension between the two figures, and that included Lahore Sheikh Jangi forming his own political party that's called the People's Front, and that political party competed in the elections in Kurdistan and won 2 seats in the most recent elections. And as a result, the tension has been building up. And in addition to that, of course, you have had some security tensions between the two camps, as Lahore, up until August 22nd, had his own military force called the Scorpion Military Force. And I don't think Bafel Talabani or the PUK viewed that force favorably. They always thought that force shouldn't exist, is a bit of a threat to the PUK security establishment. And some of those reasons led to what we saw on August 22nd.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I recall that Lahore and his force were rather instrumental in the fight against ISIS in past years. But going back to the coup claims, and we have now security forces involved and elections, how do you assess the claims by the PUK that Lahore was planning to assassinate Bafel Talabani and overthrow the government? Is there a possibility, given what you said about security threats and elections, that it was the other way around? There was a preventative rather than a preemptive operation. What's your assessment, Ahmed?
The authorities in Sulaymaniyah have offered a great deal of details on what they describe as a coup attempt. However, this being Iraq, there is a great deal of skepticism about those details, and that skepticism will continue moving forward. And I think the PUK will have to continue to grapple with how to prove that there was a coup attempt, and they will use and work with the courts and the judiciary system to prove some of it, because this is a big case in terms of two major political leaders in Kurdistan, and the PUK will certainly have a heavy task of presenting the evidence and proving the evidence, in particular when you consider that there will be international attention to this case. Lahore Sheikh Jangi, in addition to being an Iraqi citizen, is also a British citizen, and that fact may present some challenges in the court moving forward.
Hmm. And I think also Bothell is also a British citizen, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. As you can judge by his accent. I want to take this in another direction. Given your knowledge of the Kurdistan region, which is quite deep, do you think a coup could have actually worked within that context of Sulaymaniyah? I mean, in terms of Lahore's actual power and support base within the PUK controlled zone of the Kurdistan region, did he have the wherewithal to actually perform a successful coup? And the other part of this, I think, question is, would a coup have been a viable pathway to power in a subnational entity within Iraq, like the PUK controlled territory? For instance, would the KDP, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, which is the other ruling party in the Kurdistan region, would the KDP have been willing to accept a new reality that was enforced by a coup by Lahore? Or would the federal government in Baghdad, for example, have been willing to entertain, that kind of power change in Sulaymaniyah? Could they have conceivably recognized the outcome of a coup?
The activities in Sulaymaniyah were clearly seen as a threat by the PUK and by the leadership of the PUK. Whether Lahore could have done it or not, we will never know. But the authorities in Sulaymaniyah saw it as threatening activities, whatever was going on. And I think the PUK took that step with that in mind. For the KDP and Baghdad, the approach that they took was more of a wait and see approach as well. As the operation was unfolding, they did not take any steps to stop the operation on the ground. In fact, there are reports that Bafel Talabani had gone to Baghdad and consulted with the federal government or informed the federal government that something like this might happen. And that's why even now we are still seeing more of an acceptance by the federal government and also by the KDP of what happened in Sulaymaniyah. Because at the end, the current authorities in Sulaymaniyah are with the PUK and are with Bafel Talabani.
Hmm. Do you think that, neighboring countries, Iran, Turkey, especially Iran, given its proximity, geographic proximity to the PUK controlled zone and the close relationships that have existed between, various PUK leaders and the Iranian government, and also between the PUK and Iran-backed political and militia leaders in Baghdad. Do you think there is something, there has been a role for Iran or Turkey in this, given, especially I think that Lahore is seen more of a Western leaning figure?
There are certainly reports in Kurdistan and discussion in Kurdistan about the role of various countries. However, it is difficult to assess, if there was any involvement or if there was any attempt to influence the operation. I do think at the end there was a recognition that the PUK is dominant in Sulaymaniyah and it is able to take a step like this. And they all accepted it and perhaps just wanted to watch how the situation unfolds.
Okay, final question, Ahmed. What do you think are the implications of this violent episode for Sulaymaniyah, for security conditions in the greater PUK controlled zone, especially given Lahore's history as a commander of an important, small but effective security force? And also, what are the implications for future PUK KDP relations? So, security and politics.
Clearly, the big impact that we have to watch is on the government formation in the Kurdistan region because both the KDP and PUK are involved in discussions about forming the new Kurdistan regional government. And the parliament of the Kurdistan region is supposed to convene this month and initiate some steps in that process. But with the events that took place in Sulaymaniyah, it really is something to watch because so far the KDP and PUK have had good negotiations, friendly relations, nothing that produced a government or anything along those lines, but friendly negotiations in many ways. So with what happened, will there be a different PUK stance, for example, or will there be a different understanding by the KDP towards the PUK, its leadership, and its position? I think that's the biggest impact that we have to watch for. The second big impact that we have to watch for is what the opposition forces in Sulaymaniyah will do, because there are opposition forces in Sulaymaniyah that have gone a bit quiet, condemned some of the events that took place, but they're also assessing what they can do given the operation and given the level of involvement by security forces in this operation. And so I think that will be also very important to watch.
And do you think these clashes will distract, and their, of course, their aftermath will distract from ongoing operations against ISIS remnants in the PUK zone and adjacent areas? You know, a lot of the weakly governed zones between PUK, KRG controlled territories and federally controlled territories?
I don't believe so, just because there has been good cooperation between Iraqi federal forces and PUK controlled forces around those areas, and I think that will continue because for now there isn't ongoing security operations in Sulaymaniyah at a scale that will prevent any needed operations
Mm-hmm.
to target ISIS or go after ISIS in the areas that are close to Sulaymaniyah or close to PUK control zones.
Well, thank you so much, Ahmed. It's always great to hear your deep insight about Iraq and especially about the Kurdistan region. This is it for today's briefing. If you've enjoyed this analysis and found it useful, please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends who might also be interested in this content on Iraq. We have a free weekly update on Iraq that you can sign up to get by visiting us at enablingpeace.org. It's a weekly update. You'll find it every Thursday in your inbox. Last word, next weekend is the annual 5K to benefit Iraqi children. It's run by the Iraqi Children Foundation. This is the 13th edition. And Epic always tries to have the largest team. So join us in supporting a great cause, whether you can join us in person. Some of us will be here. I think Ahmed will be there. I'll try to be there. Or even if you can just join us virtually, run, walk, or join us in spirit and support a great cause. So we hope to see you there. Until next time, ma'as salama.